Welcome to another episode of the BlueFort Blueprint. Today I'm joined by Viraj and Sayam as always, and we're doing things a little bit differently. We don't have a guest with us, but we're going to be changing the podcast format a little bit. Twice in a month, every alternate Saturday, we're going to be bringing you with the news of what's happening in the world of business and finance, and just discussion on what is BlueFort's take on it, and what we perceive the of what's going on to be. So, guys, I think the first topic that we had spoken about and the first big news is basically India now overtaking Hong Kong stock markets, which, in my opinion, is a huge deal because, it was October, November 2023. I'd seen the stats of the biggest markets in the world, and there was almost $1 trillion difference in India and Hong Kong. And I remember thinking to myself, ki at least I think ek do saal lagega before we overtake Hong Kong. But January 2024, and we've already overtaken Hong Kong, which is absolutely crazy. So the world is changing very, very fast from what we've seen, and your takes on what's happening, because I think India is now coming up as one of the sort of biggest powers in the world.
But as you mentioned, right, it's India that has come up extremely fast, especially in the last 12 months, right? We've seen how the small caps, the mid caps, in general, all the companies within the index, outside the index, have been growing their market caps tremendously. I think it comes down to India keeping their consumption positive, keeping their consumption absolutely high, and at the same time, the world not doing that great, right? So, be it the European markets, being Hong Kong, as we mentioned, there is a stark difference between how India is operating and how these guys are operating, and I think that's one of the primary reasons why this particular
Yeah, it's really
why the
interesting
staggering
because
growth is there.
now like the markets are very like polarizing. If you see US, India, and Japan are basically at an all-time high. China is at an all-time low. So there's no like, okay, the world is moving in a consistent direction. Everybody's growing. It's either you're doing extremely well and extremely badly, which is why the money is moving also in such a way that either everything is coming to India. And what scares me now is that is there some sort of a risk in the market where if things change, a lot of money can move away from India.
I
That
think we're
is,
seeing that in the last 7 days, no?
yeah, in the last
The
7 days, there's been
the
some
kind
sort
of
of
correction
correction.
that has been coming today also, in fact,
Yeah, but
as
so
we speak.
tiny, yeah, the correction is minor compared to what's happened so far. It doesn't seem like India will drop a lot,
So
at
just
least for
to
now.
put some numbers to the divergence, I was just checking. In the last 5 years, the Hang Seng Index is down 42% in 5 years, and India is up 97%. That's a massive divergence. The chart where
So
Hong Kong was
130% difference.
exactly
Wow.
exactly, and Hong Kong, by the way, is dominated by the Chinese companies, right? Alibaba, Tencent, Meituan, all these companies are listed there, and China is really struggling. The Chinese economy consumption is coming down. This is the second year now where their population is declining, and it's an aging population. So it's a structural issue, and we are sitting at the other end, where structurally our population, our demographics look very strong. We have a young workforce, consumption is going up. So I think this is not a short-term thing. I think it's a very permanent kind of trend that we're seeing.
Of course, one of the only things that could be very different between India and China could is the political factor, right? How stable we are in terms of our policies or the government that we have, and you know what's been happening there, right? Alibaba, there was a proper, a big problem with them. Jack Ma was what? I think
Jack
he
Ma
wasn't.
just disappeared.
He
One of
disappeared
the
for a few
wealthiest
months,
guys in
right?
your
Yeah.
country just
Yeah.
disappears.
We
You
saw
know that you can't trust the regulation and the government of
exactly.
that people.
You saw what happened with which is the Evershine,
Evergrande.
Evergrande.
Evergrande, right?
Yeah.
Evergrande, Country
Tencent.
Garden.
You saw what happened with Tencent,
Yeah.
right? So I think it comes down to the policies as well. And you see Adani here, yeah. You see how I think a major difference between why India market is doing so well is because of his companies as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt political stability is one of the biggest factors why foreign institutions trust the markets of one country. I think they don't care whether it's the BJP or Congress, as long
Right.
as there's stability in the market, stability in the political environment. Sorry, then we'll see our sort of country continuing to do well.
Correct.
And China, may that's precisely the opposite of what's happened, of what's happening
Exactly.
in India. Now we are seeing a very authoritarian kind of regime where one person dictates, whether certain industries will do well or certain industries will not do well.
So one example is that they decided to shut down their education sector.
Right.
Wildly successful companies, very profitable, amazing growth. And one day they just decide, the government decides that we want to make the cost of raising a child cheaper because obviously the population is easing. So how do you do that? education as a sector cannot be for profit anymore. Entire sector's profitability disappears overnight. Share prices of this one company called New Oriental, it went from $200 down to like, I think it's about $10 or something. That's the kind of wealth loss that people saw, and that's what scared people away. Now, foreign investors' confidence in China is at an all-time low, and their confidence in India is at an all-time high.
I think the timing also worked really well between the Hang Seng Index and Indian Index as well. The China plus one story, and not only for, not only for some businesses, but your steel, basic products as well, right? Even the financial markets, of course, because we're talking about them. But your steel, infra, everything was China plus one. You see so many manufacturing companies. Your Apple is putting down its second plant now in India. There's Tesla coming. There are so many more companies investing.
But what do you think is like the biggest risk India has? Like everybody's been, I think in the last 1 year, everybody's been praising India so much that we forget to talk about the risks. You know, we've seen like a one-way streak in the markets. There must be something, right, that is not, that investors need to be a little scared of.
What I think is that India geographically is surrounded by, there is not a single
Like a
particular
war,
country,
you're
I would say.
saying?
Not a war per se, but you get it, right?
By
Look at
border
Sri Lanka.
skirmishes, anything like
Borders,
that.
our borders, we are surrounded by Pakistan, we are surrounded by China, Nepal. Nepal is again China. There is Bangladesh, who is controlled half by China, half by India. It depends on what their mood is that particular day. Sri Lanka, we saw what happened with Maldives right now.
So geopolitical tensions, you feel
It is, that's one of the factors that could come up.
So last 3-4 years obviously have been very rosy. What do you guys think is going to happen going forward? What's the outlook?
So I think in the short term there are a couple of risks I see. One thing is like in the short term is what I was basically saying. I feel that if the Chinese government basically gives out some meaningful stimulus in there and takes some meaningful steps to prop up their economy,
Which
then
they
I do
are
think,
talking about.
then I think that a lot of money will move from India to China, back into China, because right now China is ridiculously cheap in the markets, right? And India, of course, is expensive for a reason, but it is expensive. So that is one. The other risk is, I think, India, and we were speaking about this as well the other day. India is a highly export, we service export oriented economy, right? And we export like billions of dollars worth of IT services every year, to the West. Now with artificial intelligence coming in, I think that a lot of these developers and coders who are doing gada mazdoori, or who are doing labor work will essentially get wiped out. So that is a very big industry in the medium to long term, maybe, or maybe even in the short term. Who knows how AI is going to sort of come up? That industry might just get, I wouldn't say wiped out, but they're going to disrupted, and they're going to have to make major changes. So these two risks I see coming in the Indian markets, and the problem is that India just does not have the same level of vocational education as China does. We've all tried to hire a basic BCom in India just does not have the same skill that somebody like a US bachelor's would or a Chinese bachelor would. It's so different. So everything, like India looks great right now, but there are some risks, and I'm sure our government's looking into this. It's not like we're the only ones who recognize this. There are people are doing plenty about this as well.
I think education is key. I think until we don't upskill our workforce, it's great to have a huge workforce, but they also need to be skilled, because unskilled is going to be taken away by automation, AI, and so on.
Yeah, that ratio is important. I think once that is crossed, the ratio of skilled to unskilled labor, then I think India is in a great place overall.
Correct.
Also, just generally, just based on history, when the market does go up so much, there are bound to be some corrections, right? And I would say it's healthy. So there's bound to be some volatility. I think the last 1 year, the markets ran up very quickly by a lot. So I think there is probably some volatility coming in the next few months or so.
This is a great place to say this, because all our clients anyway keep asking us, market kya lagta hai? It's important to understand that where we are looking at, right, the markets and everything, it's a mean reverting mechanism on its own. There is nothing what we are doing in the studio here, or some people in Delhi or Ahmedabad doing whatever it is. It is a mean reverting mechanism. तो जो चीज़ इतना फास्ट ऊपर जा रही है, वो वही तेजी से नीचे आने वाली है, right? Now कभी नीचे आएगा, क्या नीचे आएगा? Literally no Tom, Dick and Harry knows that, right? Even the best of the best operators would not know that. But the idea is, in the shorter term, there will be some correction because of the fact that in the last 10 months it's gone up too soon, too fast. But I think in the medium to long term, which is 3 to 5 years, 7 years, it's a no-brainer to be invested in India.
Honestly, people talk about what is the valuation we're running at, the PE of Nifty and things like that. What are the earnings coming in? I think one of the biggest signs is behavioral. When you see people that have no experience investing, no experience in finance, they're coming and giving you tips.
They
They're
become fund
saying that,
managers,
and
yeah.
they become fund managers, they become experts. Ki mujhe to sab aata hai. I think that's when you know that, okay, you know what, it's like near the peak, this can't sustain. And every cycle, you'll see hundreds of thousands, millions of people entering the market, and when there's a correction, they'll leave the market.
With this market and all this talk, right? What we've seen is the country is full of good vibes right now, and what we saw this Monday,
Yeah,
uh,
what an incredible
brilliant. I
second
mean,
Diwali we had.
so this entire town was lit up, every area, every street, the entire vibe around this and the aura around this country right now is beautiful.
Correct. Yeah, I think it was an event of huge historical significance and something of like tremendous cultural importance to our country. And there was a second Diwali that we basically made, right? And from a political standpoint, it just shows that when see there's people get too emotional with this, right? But it's the message that this sends to other countries and to the public in general. When a political party says in their manifesto we want to do something, and they go ahead and do it, right? And the public enjoys that. That just shows some sort of political stability, and the fact that that stability the fact that that is happening in our country is great news, and we all know what's going to happen in the election. It's just a matter of how many
The
seats.
timing of this was a marketing genius, as
Yeah,
usual.
it was a marketing genius, and why shouldn't they do it? I think we all know what the result is going to be. The market has already accounted
I
for
think
the
factored that
fact,
in,
yeah, that
absolutely.
NDA will come back in. It's just a matter of how many
I
seats.
think the next day, what market fell by 1,000, 1,200 points
Yeah.
after.
The cultural importance is obviously huge, but it's going to bring some economic benefit as well. I think tourism is something that in India has not been explored as much, and through this, it's going to get a real boost, I think.
And India, per se, as compared to European countries where tourism is immense, or let's say other Asian countries, right? We are a land of heritage and culture. And religious tourism is the only thing that will boost our tourism more than anything
Yeah,
else.
Ayodhya is going to
Right?
be bigger than Mecca, and it's going to
I
be bigger
we read
than
that article, yeah.
what's the other one? Vatican as well,
Vatican.
right? So it's going to be the biggest
And
religious.
Jeffrey said this.
Yeah,
Jeffrey's
Jeffrey's
released a report wherein they
correct.
mentioned that it's going to be one of the biggest tourism sites in the world.
Correct. And I think some of the stocks that we've seen, which are the stocks that we've seen go up tremendously because of Ayodhya. Indigo has been one of them. Indian Hotels has been one of them.
IRCTC.
IRCTC has been one of them. So that that's the level of importance this event had.
And again, such kind of let's say a big event happening, right? It enables these hotels, these stations, these airports. Look at Ayodhya Airport now. Look at all the hotels that are coming. Look at the land prices there, right? So suddenly out of nowhere, right? People have made money. Now they have money in their pockets. Their lands, which they had, which were nothing. Now they've doubled, tripled, maybe more. I'm just, underestimating it right now. Now those guys have money, so they come out of their particular poverty line, and then kind of invest outside. And this just, it really it has a trigger effect on the entire GDP of a country in general. Just a small, just an event which people thought ki, okay, let's create a controversy, it's about this god and this that. But the entire, if you look at it from a wholesome point of view, it's a brilliant move.
That's actually a very good point. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of people that criticize that why are you spending so much money on a religious thing.
Make
Or
a
there,
hospital or something, right? Make a
exactly.
hospital.
Or there were people that also criticized our journey to the moon. That why are you throwing
Right.
so much money there when there's poverty and all that. They don't understand how the economy works. We're not strapping a buttload of cash and sending it to the moon. The money is going back into the economy. It's providing employment, right? People are getting more money. They're able to spend it. It's providing more projects for the vendors. So that money goes back into the economy, and that is what productivity is. I just want to go back to the point on the stocks. The stocks, every time something like this happens, there are always articles across all media houses, the top seven stocks that will benefit from this. And trying to encourage people to buy them. I would really like to advise caution. Don't just believe these lists and start buying. One example is there's this micro cap company. No one ever heard of it before, called Praveg. And this came into the news because they built some like tent city in Ayodhya. Apparently, they were doing something in Lakshadweep as well, and the stock has just gone through the roof. Please do your research. Don't just believe these articles. They're not always going to work out. They're just easy marketing.
Yeah, even if your stock had the word, Lakshadweep or
Lakshadweep,
something like
yeah.
that, then you would have made a lot of money. It's like that.
So that also reminds me of another point. A lot of companies now, interestingly, micro cap companies which have nothing to do with IT or AI or anything like that, they're changing their names to sort of make them sound like they're linked to AI or
Yeah.
cloud
Yeah,
computing,
correct.
something like that, even though they were maybe originally builders or something,
Yeah.
just so that they can try and pump the stock up. So stay away from those guys.
Yeah, a lot of companies put the word technology in, even though it
Yeah.
has nothing
There's
to do with
nothing.
technology.
Another big news item this week, Z.
Oh yeah.
Z and Sony deal fell through, and we saw what that resulted in. Z
30%?
stock fell down 30%
In one day.
in a single day.
I think I remember we releasing a message to our clients about Netflix falling down by 20-30%, right? And Netflix is a huge company in terms of their market cap, nowhere
No,
close to
Netflix had fallen down 70%, yeah, at one point
in a
in
day.
time.
No, not
not
in
in
a
a
day.
day.
From
One
its
day,
peak.
Oh, in a
Meta or
day.
Z
Netflix
fell
had
30% in a day.
So Netflix having that kind of volatility was a
Uh.
huge event, and Z, it's a small company at the end of the day
Yeah, yeah.
as compared to Netflix.
Yeah.
And just because of, I mean, their business problems or promoter problems or whatever there is, right, within that.
Promoter problem.
Promoter problems mostly. So yeah, because of that, 30%.
So I
is
think
a
basically
lot,
Sony
yeah.
pulled out because they didn't want to have
Puneet Goenka.
Puneet Goenka on the board, right? Or as running as the CEO
Okay,
of the new.
but he's 1,000 crores richer, I believe.
Is he? How is that?
I think he siphoned off some money. Didn't he?
That's what the market. That's what the rumors are.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, there's no smoke without fire, right? SEBI had a problem with him. SEBI
Correct.
wanted him to step down, and Sony had the same thing, that they wanted the deal. Obviously, Z is a big name in the industry here, but they wanted it without Puneet Goenka at the top, and they went back and forth. Eventually, Z never agreed to it, and so Sony decided it's not worth it. It's been too long. Let's just pull out of it. And
It was for 2 years, right? 2021.
2 years, 2 years, and I've had this conversation with so many clients. A lot of retail investors saw that Z is now doing well. It's gone up. Sony के साथ merger हो जाएगा, market share बड़ा हो जाएगा, and it's going to do really well. And all of that has just gone in the water in literally a single day. And that is the risk that carries investing in a single stock.
We spoke about the recent bull run. Nifty and its companies in general in your portfolio, they've given you 30%, 35% returns. Right?
Yeah.
And just by having Z in your portfolio, you've negated that entire bit.
Correct.
The idea being, what we are trying to say is that these stocks, right, Z, Vodafone, Yes Bank, these penny stocks which become after a company has, messed up in a deal or their business is not working, whatever, they become operator driven stocks to a certain extent. So these stocks are pushed through portfolios and pushed through people that, okay, buy this, buy this, buy this, pushed through brokers. So your broker will be calling, अच्छा आप Z ले लीजिए, आप ये कीजिए. The idea is आपने चलो थोड़े लेवल पे ले लिया, इट्स ओके. अगर वो डबल हो गया, ट्रिपल हो गया, इट्स गुड फॉर यू, राइट? बट मोर ऑफन देन नॉट, मोस्ट ऑफ these stocks and most of these companies have such volatility associated with it
Yeah.
कि इवेंचुअली 5-6 साल निकल जाएंगे, आपके पैसे इफ यू आर लकी ब्रेक इवन होंगे, वरना तो आपके लॉस पे ही निकलना पड़ेगा.
I think most people just don't, at least in India, they have no idea what the idea of or the concept of corporate governance is. If we ask retail investors, 9 out of 10 people, forget 9 out of 10 people, 10 out of 10 people will not know corporate governance ka
Correct.
matlab kya hota hai. And corporate governance basically means that as an investor, जब IPO आता है company का, when you're giving them money, right, for their business, right, they're raising money for their business at the
Correct.
end of the day, and you are as a retail investor giving them money. Now they've collected money from thousands of people, but it's that one person, right, who has control over that money. अब वो पैसे के साथ क्या करता है is up to him or her, right? Of course, there's a board, but typically most businesses in India, listed companies in India, are family driven. Right?
The board is just full of their family and friends.
Board is full of family and friends. तो अब एक जन के पास वो पैसा आ गया, thousands of crores, and now they decide that, okay, now I want to buy a hotel in London for myself. Now I want to buy a nice car. Now I want to buy a Boeing for myself. And who is there to stop you, right? You have no idea. You are looking at the P&L and balance sheet, and you're thinking that, oh, this company has so and so assets, but you have no idea whether those are his personal assets or business assets. Another very classic case in India is that you show some business and you take 1,000 crores loan from a bank, and as soon as you take that loan from a bank, if you have no intention to pay it off, there's nothing the bank can do, and you're worth 1,000
There are
crores.
live examples for that.
Exactly. Right? So corporate governance means आप कितने भी smart हो balance sheet P&L पढ़ने में, if you don't know the intention of the promoter, then all of your smartness goes to zero. It makes no sense. And in India, where businesses are family run, and if you don't know what their corporate governance or what their intention is, then you will never make money in the market. It's as simple as that.
So another big news item this week was Byju's, from what was the star of
22
Indian
billion?
startups, 22 billion
now?
valuation to now 2 billion.
That's also, I think it's less
It's
than
2
that.
billion. They're raising at 2 billion, 90% drop
They're
in
raising
investor
money
net
at 2
wealth.
billion.
They're
From
raising
existing
from their
investors.
existing investors.
Existing
right?
investors.
I think they're
Existing
raising 100
investors.
million
Yes.
from their existing investors. And I think
At
that
a
100
valuation
million,
of 2 billion.
I believe that 100 million is just to pay the salaries which they haven't in the last few months. And it's
Yeah.
because they've piled up to a big amount.
Yeah, yeah.
People are leaving left, right, center. They have no team now.
Ah.
And I think what Mr. Ravindran, Byju Ravindran, he'd put his own assets on lease or something sometime back.
Right, right.
So maybe it's to,
You know what the dumbest thing is? They sponsored the Football World Cup. They had Messi as their brand ambassador.
Yeah,
How
man,
much
it's
money did they spend on that?
no excuse, like no excuse. People,
they owe
there's
thousands of crores to
absolutely-
BCCI for, having
Yeah,
them as the
there's a
jersey.
suit filed also, and
Right.
it's going in court. But there's absolutely no excuse to not be paying your employees and having Lionel Messi on as a brand ambassador. It's ridiculous. I think that Indians, they represent in. Unfortunately, this is a very unpopular opinion, but this is not just my opinion, but I can back it up with facts. But I do think a lot of Indian startups are highly, highly overvalued,
Right.
and frankly, they're full of shit. They show the India story. That's what they pitch to their foreign counterparts, and I think those guys lap it up, especially when they had a lot of money back in 2020 and 2021,
Yeah.
when there was a lot of money being printed by all the banks. That look, we have 1.4 billion people in India. Penetration itna hi hai. Imagine how many customers we can raise. Imagine how big this business can be. But all of those, that entire pitch is not, if you actually check the details, and it's not scientifically backed. And a lot of our startups are trading at some ridiculous valuations. They're going to be doing horribly.
Let's take the example of Byju's. I believe, 8-10 years ago when they came, or maybe more, right? They had a promise, what they were doing with Shah Rukh Khan on board, and their initial, just tuitions.
Yeah.
Tuitions online, not a school kind of a thing, but just a tuition, helping people.
They actually had a great
Helping
product.
people who could not afford these tuition teachers
Yes.
and all of that, just have a video, and it was great, honestly.
Yeah.
But what kept happening, right, and that's what happened with most of the startups in India, right? As they started riding that wave of raising investments,
Yeah.
they forgot about their core problem. They started getting into different things. They wanted to be everything at one point of time.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, when we started BlueFort, we thought we'll be a wealth management first. Until now, we're doing that. Right.
Yeah.
Now we do have some plans which will come forward, but again, our idea is to have this as a core business
Yeah.
and make it a decently big at least, so that we can think about something else, right? But these guys, what kept happening, right? मुझे ये भी करना है, मुझे ये भी करना है, और उस चक्कर में सारी जगह से they could not do anything.
Yeah, it's basically growth at all costs, whatever it takes. I
Exactly.
mean, those guys have basically like threatened their customers and coerced their customers into buying their courses.
Correct.
Is what we've heard. What they do is they literally in lower middle class जो families होती है, उनके बच्चों के parents को they threaten that if you don't
fail हो जाएंगे, इनके साथ
fail
कुछ
हो
नहीं
जाएंगे,
होगा.
ऐसा होगा,
Correct.
your kid will be left behind, you're a horrible parent and all of that. Obviously, our parents don't fall for that sort of stuff, but a lot of other parents in India do fall for that.
And I'll
kind
tell
of
you
stuff.
why it was a great product before, because EdTech was not a thing before Byju's came in,
Yeah.
right? And education in India, which we spoke about on this podcast also before, right? It is very important for us to be skilled for the lower middle class and people who cannot afford good schools and good tuitions, right? For them to be having such certain kind of knowledge.
Yeah.
And Byju's was trying to do that. So brilliant idea, brilliantly executed before, just to come on board with this. But certain decisions, again, Lionel Messi, your BCCI, it's not needed. Yeah, you're an EdTech.
That's why when you raise
what the
money
hell were
from
you want to do with your sponsoring FIFA World Cup? There is absolutely nothing in commonality that way.
I mean, it's just one word for it. It's greed.
It's great,
And
yeah, absolutely.
You think about it, right? What's happening in the market? Every article you read right now about Zomato, any of these companies that have listed or are close to listing, everyone's talking about profitability or path to profitability. 2-3 years ago, this did not exist at all. It was all about growth, about
Correct.
market size, number of users. That is all that mattered. And
there was
now,
an entire wave where people were raising money left, right, center.
exactly. But the investors also, that's what they were asking for. If as an investor, any of the big guys, SoftBank or Sequoia or any of these guys, that said that show me the unit economics. If you don't, I'm not going to invest. Then that wouldn't have happened. And now that we're seeing all of these failures, now everyone's pivoting to trying to show profitability and making unit economics work.
I think business also, what we've learned from our dads or in general, right? The meaning of business is to make money. Profit. धंधा मुनाफा जो भी बोलते हैं, that is the most important thing. And somewhere along the lines of valuations and just making something so big out of a certain product, people forgot that particular the essence of business that way.
Correct, correct. And as investors, all we can do is we can safeguard ourselves, from this. So I think that a lot of retail guys who invest in IPOs just need to understand that uh, a lot of the startup space is nothing but a Ponzi scheme. A lot of the startups are Ponzi schemes, and good data is being shown to you. A nice pamphlet is being given to you that this is a unicorn, this is $1 billion valuation, but a lot of these businesses unfortunately don't make sense. And India में again unfortunately India में ऐसे बहुत businesses है जो who qualify under that you know uh, this whatever we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of things just work because of good marketing. Fundamentals may or may not be there. So again, don't just fall for the marketing. Stick to the tried and tested. What has created wealth has created wealth for a reason. It will probably continue to create wealth. Doesn't matter if the traditional businesses, new age businesses sound fancy, but it does not. Often, a lot of them are unproven. So don't just get caught into that.
And I'll tell you, like another this ethical thing, right? There's another way that these companies are ruining a lot of lives, and we have seen it with our clients
The
as well.
VCs.
Yeah, the VCs. I'll tell you how. Is when they give $500 million to a company which doesn't deserve that kind of money. ठीक है तो उनके पास इतना पैसा आ जाता है now that's the kind of salaries that they're paying out to a lot of employees, so a person who should be getting a 10 lakh salary is now being given a 30 lakh salary, and that's the lifestyle that they're living. So उसने घर खरीद लिया because he thinks that he can afford a certain level of EMI, he's driving a certain level of car, but when the economy turns around, and let's say like a Byju that goes from a $22 billion to 2 billion, this guy's going to be laid off. Who's going to pay his EMIs? Who's going to take care of his house? How is he going to improve his standard of living from here? Who's going to give him another job? So there's a ripple effect on the economy for every bad business investors invest in, right? There's one guy who is already worth 100 million, who's worth now $200 million, but there's a guy who barely got to his first 1 CR and now is sitting at 30 lakhs, and बेचारे के पास कुछ भी नहीं है. So there's a huge ripple effect, and I think ethics does come into it here. We must sort of take this into account.
On a separate note and just a different thought, right? In India, once you receive that kind of money, I personally think that people don't know what to do with it, right? They tend to kind of, I don't know how it works in the West. It may be the same way, but people tend to focus on the other things like, अच्छा ठीक है, अगर पैसे आ गए तो पूरी फर्म 1000 लोगे 2000 लोगे, टी शर्ट पहले बनाओ, उनको ऑफ साइड के लिए लेके जाओ. कौन सी वन कंपनी आई हर्ड recently only which fired right now only, I think
Right after an offside.
correct, right after an offside, right?
Yeah.
So you go to an offside with 500 600 people, you come back on a Monday and then you're just firing 100 200 people. That's I mean, that's what happens when you don't know with the kind of money that you get, right, with funding.
There's actually a very good stand up on this. Some guy does it. I can't remember his name, but he talks about he was part of one of these companies. He got laid off just after the offside.
Correct, exactly. So we read about it.
So yeah, that's it, guys. We tried out a new format today, and if you enjoyed it, please do subscribe to the channel, like our podcast, and share with as many friends as possible. We'll keep bringing out information on what's happening in the world of business and finance, like I said. And today we spoke about how India is doing as a stock market, and how global markets are doing. We spoke about Ayodhya and the political stability that the country has now. We spoke about the Z and Sony merger, and the startup world of India, where a lot of startups in India, basically how they're doing. Please do comment and let us know how you thought, what you thought of this. Thank you so much.